In September 2022, Moscow held a funeral for the final leader of the Soviet Union. The modest ceremony and limited crowd bore little resemblance to the global significance of the man inside the coffin. Russian President Vladimir Putin was noticeably absent. Citing a busy schedule, he opted instead for a brief, solitary visit to a snow-covered clinical hospital in the days prior to the service. The quiet dismissal stands in stark contrast to the recent past. When Boris Yeltsin died in 2007, the Kremlin declared a national day of mourning and hosted a massive, full-scale state funeral. Outside of Russia, the reaction followed a different script. Western leaders, including former German Chancellor Angela Merkel, immediately issued glowing tributes, praising him as a peacemaker and a historical giant. Which leaves us with a paradox. How does Mikhail Gorbachev become a revered savior to the rest of the globe, while his own government barely acknowledges his passing? By sidelining the man who oversaw the Soviet collapse, the Kremlin used his funeral to signal a final break from Gorbachev's version of history. When Gorbachev took power in 1985, the Soviet system was decaying from the inside. The economy was stagnant, and the leadership was aging. Facing a crisis, he chose to pursue reform rather than repression. He introduced Glasnost, a policy of governmental openness, and as Eastern European nations began to protest against Soviet control, Gorbachev made a crucial decision. He kept the military's tanks parked. That hands-off approach allowed peaceful revolutions to sweep through the Eastern Bloc. By 1989, the Berlin Wall had fallen, allowing Germany to reunite without a single shot fired by Soviet troops. As the Soviet grip loosened, Western diplomats, including U.S. Secretary of State James Baker, worked to negotiate a peaceful transition of power in Europe. During a critical meeting in 1990, Baker offered Gorbachev a verbal assurance. If a unified Germany remained in NATO, the alliance's military jurisdiction would not shift 1 inch eastward toward Russia. For the West, this cemented his legacy. He is revered as the statesman who willingly dismantled an empire to secure global stability. But inside the borders of his own country, those same well-intentioned reforms triggered a rapid and catastrophic economic collapse. Take the 1985 anti-alcohol campaign. It was designed to boost worker productivity by limiting alcohol sales, but it backfired almost immediately. This chart highlights the economic fallout. With alcohol tax revenue wiped out, a massive black market stepped in. To cover the shortfall, the government printed money, fracturing the financial infrastructure from the inside out. The human toll was immediate. Millions watched their life savings vanish, leaving them waiting in freezing queues just to secure a loaf of bread. To the Russian establishment, Gorbachev remains the leader who bartered away their superpower status and economic security for little more than Western rhetoric. Those promises were tested quickly. Throughout the 90s and 2000s, NATO steadily incorporated former Soviet bloc countries, expanding eastward. For the Russian elite, watching the alliance reach their border confirmed their deepest fears. The West had exploited a moment of weakness. Vladimir Putin built his political identity on this exact resentment. He views the Soviet collapse as a geopolitical catastrophe, framing himself as the necessary corrective. Where Gorbachev dreamed of a common European home, the current Russian regime derives its legitimacy from standing in direct, hostile opposition to the West. That specific narrative of a naive Russian leader and a deceptive, expanding NATO now serves as the ideological justification for Russia's modern military campaigns, including the invasion of Ukraine. Gorbachev dismantled the Cold War without a single shot, but the ashes of his empire provided the exact